You ever have the moment where the people who are supposed to be your safe harbor, your family, look at you with nothing but cold disdain and tell you that you are worthless? That moment came for me on my 14th birthday. My mother and stepfather, Caroline and Stephen, sat me down not with a cake, but with a curt, brutal ultimatum. I was a burden, a drain on their new, luxurious life. And I was being shipped off to a relative I barely knew, thousands of miles away. Stephen, my stepfather, the man who had systematically replaced my late father in every way, looked me in the eye and said, "We're done subsidizing your existence, Elias. Go find some other sap to pay for your college dreams." They had recently inherited a modest sum enough to upgrade their lifestyle, and I, their teenage son, was apparently the only thing preventing them from buying the luxury SUV and the country club membership they craved. They gave me one suitcase, a bus ticket, and 5 days to get out. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that the relative they sent me to, my eccentric, estranged maternal grandfather, Arthur, was not just a lonely old man. He was the sole owner of a sprawling, secret corporate empire and a $42 million estate. And just 3 years after they threw me out, calling me a burden, I stood in a lawyer's office, the sole heir to every single penny. My mother and stepfather, having squandered their own inheritance, came crawling back, demanding their rightful share of the fortune I was never supposed to have. The question wasn't if I should give them a cut, but whether I should use my overwhelming, absolute power to pay them back for every single lonely night, every cold word, and every tear I cried when they cast me out. Was I wrong to use $42 million to deliver a chilling, permanent lesson in consequence? To fully grasp the setup, you need the history. My biological father died when I was 7. He was a kind, gentle man, but he was not wealthy. My mother, Caroline, was always driven by appearances and status. She married Stephen, a man whose ambition vastly outpaced his income, 2 years later. Stephen was immediately resentful of me. I was a constant, living reminder of my mother's less than glamorous past and a tangible obstacle to their financial freedom. They dreamed of the high life, and I was the high schooler who needed clothes, food, and, eventually, college tuition. The resentment festered for years. Stephen would constantly belittle my school projects, mock my clothes, and refer to me as a mouth to feed. My mother, desperate to keep Stephen happy and climb the social ladder, let him. She chose him over me every single time. The moment of expulsion came when they received a small inheritance, about $150,000, from a distant relative of Stephen's. To them, this was the key to upgrading their lives. To me, it was the currency that bought my permanent removal. My grandfather, Arthur, Caroline's father, was a different story altogether. He and Caroline had a spectacular, bitter falling out decades ago. Arthur was an eccentric former engineer, fiercely independent, and completely estranged from his daughter. He lived alone in a huge, ramshackle house 3 states away, known for being a recluse who hoarded old books, and seemed to survive on tea and contempt for the modern world. Caroline never spoke to him, and he never sent a birthday card. Yet, when Caroline was desperately looking for somewhere to dump me, he was the only option, the only person she could offload her burden onto without cost. She contacted him, spinning a fabricated tale of needing to take a foreign service job and having no choice but to send me to him. Arthur, to everyone's surprise, agreed with a single gruff word, "Fine." The journey to Arthur's house was a blur of fear and misery. I arrived to a sprawling, dilapidated property surrounded by dense woods. The house itself was a labyrinth of dusty rooms, antique furniture draped in white sheets, and a faint, pervasive smell of old paper and ozone. Arthur was intimidating, tall, gaunt, with a razor, sharp gaze and hands stained with machine grease. There were no warm hugs, no apologies for my mother's actions. He simply pointed to a small, dusty guest room and said, "That's yours. Don't touch my workspace, and don't expect catering. You earn your keep." But here's the crucial difference. Unlike Stephen, Arthur didn't want my absence. He wanted my competence. Arthur was a genius inventor who had spent the last 30 years quietly managing a corporate portfolio derived from his early patents in industrial robotics. The hoarding was actually the accumulation of prototypes, blueprints, and highly valuable, long-forgotten business documents. His gruff demeanor was a shield against the world he viewed as lazy and materialistic. He didn't care about my feelings, but he cared intensely about my mind. He saw my quiet, studious nature not as a burden, but as raw potential. He didn't send me to school, he began to teach me. Every evening, instead of doing chores, I was working in his sprawling, high-tech basement workshop, learning applied physics, advanced mathematics, and corporate finance by reviewing decades of his business deals. He was tough, demanding, and utterly relentless. But for the first time in my life, I felt valued for my intellect. He saw a legacy in me. We lived this strange, isolated life for 3 years. I stopped being Elias and became Arthur's apprentice. I learned how to read a balance sheet, how to track patents, and how to spot a weak investment from a mile away. Then, 2 months after my 17th birthday, Arthur collapsed in the workshop. He died quickly, peacefully, his last words not about love, but about an algorithm he was trying to optimize. I was shattered, not just by grief, but by the loss of the only mentor and protector I had ever known. The next few weeks were a revelation. Arthur's lawyer, a stern but kind woman named Ms. Davies, arrived with the will. My mother, Caroline, was listed for a single, symbolic bequest, a dusty, broken ceramic teapot. Everything else, the sprawling property, the corporate patents, the stocks, and the bank accounts, a total estate valued at $42 million, was left, unconditionally, to me, Elias, his grandson, who he called his sole-worthy successor. Ms. Davies explained that Arthur had been disinheriting Caroline for decades, furious at her materialism and neglect. He viewed my arrival as a final, desperate test, and my mother's willingness to dump me as the ultimate proof of her character. He had been quietly preparing me for this legacy since the day I arrived. I went from a teenage outcast to the sole heir of a $42 million empire. The moment Caroline and Stephen got wind of Arthur's death, and the subsequent probate announcement in the local paper, the vultures arrived. They drove the thousands of miles, storming the property, their grief entirely fabricated and transparently focused on the estate. Caroline, tearful and histrionic, played the role of the bereaved daughter, demanding Ms. Davies tell her the extent of the inheritance. When Ms. Davies calmly handed her the dusty teapot and read the clause explicitly excluding her from the fortune, Caroline's face turned into a mask of pure, murderous rage. The pretense dropped entirely. "You miserable brat," she shrieked at me. "After everything we did for you, you steal your grandfather's money. We sent you here to be taken care of, and you stole our birthright." Stephen immediately jumped in, playing the lawyer role. "Elias, this is fraud. We will contest this will. Arthur was clearly senile. You owe your mother a share." So that's the situation I was in. I was 18, legally sound, sitting on $42 million, facing the pathetic, desperate wrath of the people who had called me a burden and thrown me out like garbage. They had squandered their own smaller inheritance in less than 4 years, and now they were utterly broke, trying to claw back a fortune I had earned through 3 years of rigorous, isolated apprenticeship. I had the power to crush them legally and financially, or I could show some shred of mercy, perhaps buying them a small condo to get them out of my life permanently. Before I tell you the cold, methodical way I delivered my final verdict, a verdict based on the principles of competence and value Arthur had taught me, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have used the $42 million to completely ruin them and send them away with nothing? Or would you have offered them a small, parting gift, just to prove you were the better person? Seriously, let me know what choice you would have made right there. I chose the cold, methodical ruin. Mercy was not a lesson Arthur would have approved of, and I was no longer the frightened, abandoned 14-year-old. I was the steward of the $42 million Thorne legacy, and my mother and Stephen had repeatedly demonstrated their incompetence and moral bankruptcy. They were a liability, not family. Their attempts to contest the will were pathetic. Ms. Davies, having prepared for this exact eventuality, had ironclad documentation and testimony regarding Arthur's clear state of mind and his deep contempt for his daughter's materialism. The court dismissed their claim as meritless within weeks, but I wasn't done. The first piece of the puzzle was their house. They had purchased their dream house, the one I had been removed to afford, with a large, adjustable rate mortgage. They had drained their inheritance on luxury goods and credit card bills, believing their future was secure. I instructed Ms. Davies to quietly purchase the distressed debt note on their mortgage through an anonymous shell corporation. A simple, textbook financial maneuver I had learned from Arthur's old ledgers. They didn't even notice the creditor changed hands. A month later, as their financial situation completely collapsed, they missed a payment. My shell corporation immediately foreclosed. The foreclosure was swift and brutal. My legal team served them the eviction notice personally. I didn't want to talk to them, so I sent Ms. Davies to deliver the final word. Caroline and Stephen, now truly broke and desperate, showed up at the lawyer's office, begging. They offered apologies, tears, and promises of being a real family again. It was disgusting. Ms. Davies, standing in for me, read a short, prepared statement. Mr. Thorne has authorized me to deliver his response. He reminds you that you instructed him to find some other sap to pay for his college dreams. He also reminds you that competence has value and burdens do not. Mr. Thorne has chosen to liquidate the house you currently occupy and use the proceeds to create a small educational scholarship fund for worthy students in need of financial aid. He views this as a more efficient use of capital than subsidizing a demonstrable liability. The look on my mother's face, the raw realization that her son, the boy she discarded, had legally and completely annihilated her existence, was the only satisfaction I ever needed. They lost the house, their car, and their entire reputation. Their social standing vanished instantly as the story, carefully leaked by Ms. Davies to ensure maximum humiliation, hit the local papers. They were left with nothing but their debt and the bitter knowledge that they had thrown away $42 million just to save a measly $150,000 and the inconvenience of raising a son. The final piece of revenge was quiet and long-lasting. I sold Arthur's ramshackle estate, ensuring my privacy, and founded the Arthur Thorne Institute for Applied Robotics. Using the bulk of the $42 million, the Institute funds research and provides full-ride scholarships to underprivileged, highly talented students who need a mentor, not a handout. I became the foundation's CEO, fully embracing the role of the $42 million heir. I finally went to university, studying finance and engineering, but not for a degree. I was there to expand the legacy Arthur gave me. I heard through MS. Davies that Caroline and Stephen ended up moving into a dilapidated mobile home park, working minimum wage jobs. They continue to badmouth me to anyone who will listen, claiming I swindled a scene. I'll old man, but it no longer matters. They are insignificant. I am Elias Thorne, the successful steward of a multi-million-dollar legacy, the burden who finally paid his family back with interest. The day they threw me out, they thought they were getting rid of a problem. They were actually handing me the keys to a fortune and unleashing the wrath of an $42 million inheritance. The guilt is non-existent. The peace I feel is absolute. I survived the cold darkness they created and thrived in the demanding environment my grandfather offered. The greatest victory was not the money, but the validation that I was always worthy, and they were always liabilities. Like this video if you believe Elias delivered the perfect, justified financial karma. Subscribe for more stories about secret inheritances and family revenge. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Do you think I should have given them the condo to silence them? Or was the complete ruse in the only true form of justice? I'll see you all in the next story.